2, 3, 4.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Power of Music Thinking. My name is Christoph Zürn, and this is the podcast for people with a musical heart and a wicked job. We're looking for stories, insights and tools from the big world of music to inspire leaders and followers to listen, tune, play and perform in whatever field you're operating. Architecture is frozen music, and music is liquid architecture. Now, some say these famous words are from Goethe, the German writer and polymath, while others say they were from Schopenhauer, the philosopher. Anyway, besides this unclarity, there is an undebatable relation between these two. Today, we speak with Ron van Leeuwen, a man who straddles two creative worlds. By day, he's an architect and urban designer, shaping physical spaces. By night, he transforms his creative energy into music, composing pieces that have been recorded by the 55-piece Metropole Orkest. And his newest composition, Architones, is also available on Spotify. We talk about the relations and differences between working in these two fields, the metamorphoses of buildings and music, and the challenges of delivering a feasible building. Ron shares with us his composition insights and how he composed the homage to the Vredespalais, that's the Peace Palace in The Hague, starting in a waltz rhythm. Okay. Let's hear more about it. Welcome, Ron. Welcome to the Power of Music Thinking.
Thank you.
So, let's start with the first question. What's your first sonic experience, album, or performance that had an impact on you?
Well, that's hard to answer, I think, because I've been playing the piano since I was 6. So I can't remember music before that, and I had a more or less classical education with Bach and Beethoven and Mozart, and that's the first music I really loved. And then when I was about 11, 12 years old, I was interested in pop music, and I remember the New Seekers. So not the Seekers, they were from the 50s, but the New Seekers, they were from the 70s, 60s and 60s. And I really loved that music when I was at that age.
What was their biggest hit?
I'd like to teach the world to sing.
Yes.
I can sing it now.
In perfect harmony. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
I know this too. Okay.
I loved it because it's a very nice and attractive melody. And that's what I've always liked my whole life. So not complicated things, but things which are at the same time very attractive and easy to listen to, but also complex.
Wow. And what would the complexity be?
Later on, I learned to admire more complex music. But in those times, I started not only playing the piano, but also playing the guitar, and mainly chords. Mm-hmm. And I started with songs with 3 or 4 chords, and later on, the chords got more complex. And now, in the last album, I created complex chords of, let's say, 10 different notes exist. And they tend to get more complex, but they are still easy to listen to.
Ah, okay.
That's what I'm looking for all my life, I believe.
So the complexity is more on your side, and on the listening side, it should be less complex. That's the idea.
If I compare it to free jazz, I don't love that music because it's too complex. It's also complex, but it's not easy to listen to. It's more music for musicians. And I hope to make music where other people who don't like jazz also might like to listen to it, but it's still complex.
In the power of music thinking, we are looking for analogies between different fields. And in your case, that's really nice. You're combining two fields. But maybe just first, can you tell us what you do, who you are as a person, and what you do for a living?
Well, for a living, I'm an architect, and I've got a company in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. We do mainly large housing projects, residential projects. They vary from one house to 1,000 houses. So those are also very many times urban projects. So that's my daily work to design and to make sure we have good designs for residential quarters where people live, cities, parts of cities. That's what we do. And in the evening times and the weekends and at night, especially, I've got most ideas for music. So that's I combine music and architecture.
Nice. Maybe first, how big is your company?
About 35 people.
Oh, wow. That's, let's say, in musical terms, a jumbo orchestra.
I think so, yeah. I made a recording, an album with the Metropole Orkest a couple of years ago. That's 55 people, and now I did it with a big band, that's 17 people. And you're right, my company is in the middle. Yeah.
Do you learn from organizing music for organizing people?
Well, I think there are a lot of analogies between architecture and music, and also between how a company is organized and how an orchestra is organized. And the most visual of a typical similarity is we call in architecture, that's the working drawings. That's the actual drawing which is going to be built for the contractor to, well, he knows where are the windows going to be, where are the walls going to be, the floors, whatever. And you can compare that to the partituur, we say in Holland, but the score
Musical
of the music,
score,
where the actual notes are written down for the musicians. And if you have a classical orchestra or the Metropole, then most notes, almost all the notes are written down, like all the windows or all the sizes of walls, whatever, are written down, drawn in the technical drawings. But if you write for a big band, and especially the big band we used, the Paradox Jazz Orchestra in the last album, then a lot of improvisation is also possible. But that's in architecture less possible. You can't tell a carpenter, yeah, you have some wood and a hammer and go ahead. That's in architecture, I've never seen that, where carpenters, the actual builders themselves are improvising. That's a difference between architecture and music.
That's interesting. So, because when you write a musical score, it's not only for the people in your company, but also for other people that might not even see you so often. They have to do something that makes sense. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, well, that's just a way of communication. Architecture is also a very complex profession, because it's got a lot to do with politics. If we say we want a skyscraper somewhere in the town, then there are always people who say it's too high or too large or too red, it should be yellow or whatever. Everybody starts talking about it. So everybody is involved, and so you need a lot of political thinking to get it right. But it's not only politics; it's also techniques. It has to sound isolation has to be well. The daylight has to be well. Heat insulation, you name it. It has to be good in the building. So that's techniques. And the other thing is financial aspects. It has to be feasible. That's a very important thing in architecture. And in the end, because we work a lot for project developers who develop, let's say, an area in a town for 200 houses, as example, then they want to sell these houses. So the eventual buyers of the houses, they are involved too, but I never meet them. So I make designs which we and our clients and the municipality and the neighborhood say, well, this is a good project and we hope it will be sold. And mostly it is sold, but it's so many people are involved, but also many people I don't know and I will never meet. So the actual buyers of the houses I don't meet, but also the actual carpenters and the bricklayers, I don't meet them. I just provide the drawings and hope they will build as I've drawn, like I've drawn.
But if you create a musical score, that's different, right? Because then you know the players or the makers, and if you attend the concert, you also see how people react on your composition.
Yeah, that's a very special experience to see how people react. And so we had our album performed in February, and then there was a big hall, let's say about 300 people listening to the music, and they were very enthusiastic, but they all heard it for the first time. And I've heard it, let's say, hundreds of times in the last 5 years where I worked on this album. And I did have contact with the musicians, and we went to a studio in Germany, in Osnabrück, and we had 3 days of recording sessions, and then I'm in discussion with them. Well, you can play it like this, you can play it like that, or they ask me whatever is the intention, and then, but most, let's say, that's only the little details. Most of the music is already written down, except improvisations.
Okay.
Improvisations, it's completely free for the musicians, and so we had per improvisation we had about 5 different tracks. And later on in the studio, when we were mixing, we said, well, the 3rd track of this clarinet improvising is the best, and we'll take it and we put it on the CD, on the album. So it's a combination of exact notes and exact telling them how to play, and improvisation where you only give them the chords and they make their own melodies and sound and dynamics, whatever.
So you're actually in the role of a producer, telling and picking the right thing that fits best to what the composer means. In your case, it's the same person.
Yes, but the thing we picked is the tracks we picked is where they were the most inspired. And that's I remember a certain trumpet part where I thought the first track, okay, it's good, but I'm not excited. But the 3rd time he was getting beyond his boundaries, and I thought, wow, that's so beautiful, and it enhances the music.
Oh, that's interesting. So I would be interested in what happened between the 1st and the 3rd track. Was there something they played and then you give a feedback? How does this work?
No, I didn't. When they recorded, I didn't give them feedbacks. I think once or twice, but it's very few times. But no, I wanted them to give what they actually had, and so there was no. I'm not telling them, because improvisation is. Well, you can start very low and end up very high, or you can in the middle be very high and end up low, and you can get any combination you want to. That's the free mind playing. So who am I to tell them you have to do it like this? But what I did do is when I made the score in the digital form, I also I made a sort of improvisation myself, and I put it in the score. They could listen to it, so they got an indication of where I was looking for.
Oh.
So there's one song, because all the tracks are a combination between architecture and music, and one song is about the Empire State Building. And I told the piano player, I just want a sort of ragtime in this piece. And then he came to me. Well, you got different ragtimes. You got New Orleans. You got St. Louis. You got New York. Whatever. And I didn't know all these details, but he did. And I said to him, no. I said I only want many tremolos, because if you do that, it will sound as the Roaring '20s when this building was actually built, as the '20s in the last century in America. And that's so I wanted to have this energy of the '20s in this ragtime. So in this way I talked to him, and maybe he thinks that it's actually St. Louis. It might be, but I don't mind. For me, it's the Roaring '20s in New York, Empire State Building.
Right, so it's more like he understands what you say and can play it in that way without sharing exactly the vocabulary, what it is.
It is, yeah. And that's, he was very competent. He is very competent.
Yeah.
And so, and in the end, so he knows everything about ragtime music, but in the end, it doesn't matter. He just, in this piece of music, he takes the right track.
Nice. But actually, you just said there are two types of instruction. So one instruction, if I may call it this, it's right in the score, so it's exactly notated, and the other instruction is in a solo over a certain part where you have the chords, and you give them the instruction not only verbally but also musically, because you just said you did some kind of improvisation to give them the right direction. Do you also, let's make the analogy to architecture, is there sometimes in architecture a comparable situation?
Well, there is, because we, so as architects, we design these houses. Then eventually there's a contractor who's going to start to build. And during the building process, he has got questions, mainly about colors of masonry. Well, we picked the right bricks, but the I don't know the word in English, the
mortar.
Area. Sorry?
The mortar.
The mortar,
so we call
the
it,
color of the mortar.
Yeah, we talk about bricks and mortar, so the mortar is the in-between.
So we pick the bricks, but the mortar is every time in a different color, because it's a different mixture of sand or whatever, and cement. And so we go to the building place, and they build a couple of little walls with different colors of mortar, and then we talk about it, and we make a choice. This is the best mortar combined to this brick, and that's always done on the building place itself. You can't do it digitally or from a distance, but that's only very, very small detail in the building project. So you can compare it, but not that much, I believe.
And maybe it's the size of the building. Could you think that in smaller building there would be more, let's say, improvisation, or maybe it's also the outside might be composed, but the inside, the interior might be more open?
I don't believe so, because if you go to my profession 100 years ago, an architect made a facade and a plan and a section and for a house, and then he went to a contractor, he made a deal, whatever, and then he started building. And most of the details, the contractor really knew how to build it. But nowadays we have thousands and thousands of regulations we have to abide to. So it has to do with the thickness of the walls, the construction-wise, the structure, sound insulation, heat insulation, daylight, whatever. We have so many regulations that we have to make these plans very specified and very specific. This is the way to do it, because if you don't do it like this, then a certain aspect will not be according to the law, and then you can have many problems afterwards, because you can only build once. And when it's already there, you can't change the building. So there's no improvisation, and especially not in the project development, because that's a deal between a buyer of a house and a seller of the house. and that's all about what specifics. And so it's the same if you buy a car. You can't say to a car maker, I would rather have 5 wheels instead of 4. You can't tell them that. It's every car you buy has 4 wheels.
So we only stick with the color where we have some kind of variations.
Yes, but nowadays because in the housing world, many developers they hate this variation they still have. So yesterday I was with a project developer and he said, well, we have our standard product and we offer it to the market, and they can choose any color of bricks as long as it's the same red color.
Yeah, right.
Like Henry Ford said, you can have any car as long as it's black.
Yeah.
And so there is more and more standardization, and because the market asks for cheap housing, and the project developers, they say, okay, you can get this cheap house, but then it's exactly this house. Don't try to change anything because it will make it much and much more expensive. So the money aspect is very, very involved, important in architecture. And in music, that's less. As if you have an orchestra of 17 people, you can let them play. They are there anyway. So it doesn't matter if they play many notes or not too many notes, or if they go high or low, whatever, or they have a coffee in between. It doesn't matter. They are there. Money is not involved in music. But in architecture, it is all the time.
Well, if we go into pop music, where you have to book a studio and where the company is investing in your production, I think there's quite some money involved.
There is, but what I try to say is that when you have this studio and the musicians in the studio, at that point there's no money involved. You can let them have free improvisation, or you can write all the notes down, or don't write, and give them much freedom. But in architecture, till the last nail in a wall, it's money involved.
All right. Okay.
I would rather have it differently, but it's not. It's the world as it is.
In the West. So if you would look to more, and I just make it up on the spot. So if you would go into, let's say, more how housing is done in more rural areas, in more, let's say, indigenous places in the world, where they use material that it's from the place that they use it. I wonder if it's knowledge and skills, or is it maybe not regulation, or is there improvisation involved? I just wonder. What do you think?
I think so. You're right. Because in the West, it's about trade, and that's why money is involved. But I remember somewhere in Greece, they were building a boat at the beach side, and they had wood from older boats, old boats, whatever, and they were doing it with a couple of people together. I don't think they had a plan. But some people together were carpenters making this boat. Mm. So the plan they might have is a little drawing, not more than that. So the same must be possible for housing. You've got materials. Let's say a lot of. Why does the pyramid of Cheops in Gizeh in Egypt looks so rough at the bottom and only smooth at the top? Because all these smooth layers at the bottom are removed and put in other buildings somewhere in the neighborhood. Those people didn't have a plan. They just rubbed it from the building and reused it. If you go to the Mezquita in Cordoba in Spain, a lot of these columns were from Roman columns, much older, other buildings, and they just took them away and put them in the Mezquita, but they were too short, so they had to invent a double arch, which makes this building so beautiful. Mm. So it's necessity of sparse building materials, which were in the first time the reason why it's built like that, and then they got a problem and solved it, and that together made this beautiful architecture. So it's not an architect who started with a plan and thousands of drawings and regulations or whatever. It's just, it evolved. And a lot of buildings, especially old buildings, more or less evolved like that. For instance, Notre Dame in Paris. We all know this building, and it's amazing they are finishing it this year, within 5 years. But the original Notre Dame, when they started it building in 1208, I believe, within 50 years they were tearing down large parts of the walls because it was getting too dark in the interior of the church. And then they had to question what to do. We want more light, but then the building is not strong. So that's why they came up with these arches at the outside to make the walls stronger and more light in the interior. So there was no architect at the beginning. I want a Gothic architecture. It evolved because there was a problem and they had to solve it.
That reminds me a little bit to recomposition. So you start a musical piece and then you change it later. You do a remix of parts of it. You reuse different themes. Do you think that's... does this resonate with you, or do you think that's made up?
Not with me yet, but I think when I'm in my 80s, I might do that. But at the moment, I've got too many ideas I just want to work on. So I'm very happy. The old ideas are finished, and I won't touch them for the coming years. I'm quite sure about that.
And that's about music or architecture?
The same in architecture.
Okay.
The same, yeah. And in architecture, it's I've got one project now in Maassluis, and it's about 40 years old, and they're tearing it down because somebody else bought it and they want to. It was a bank building, and now it's going to be housing. But well, okay, that's life. So that's my first project I've done, which is torn down. So, but I don't mind. I've got enough other projects, enough other ideas to work on.
Nice. Talking about the way of working, so maybe first, because I think we didn't make this explicit. So what you did, you made a record with the Paradox.
Paradox Jazz Orchestra.
Jazz Orchestra, 17 people. And every song or piece is about a building. Yeah. And you just mentioned the pyramids. Are they on as well?
Yeah. Well, only one pyramid, and the biggest one, the large pyramid of Cheops. But I had this. Well, I've always had all these ideas about music, of musical ideas, and so I came up with an idea to make an album with iconic buildings, and every music piece is linked to an iconic building, and one of them is indeed the Pyramid of Cheops.
And what's special? So we all now, everybody who's listening now to our conversation has now a picture in their head about the Pyramid of Cheops, or at least the one pyramid. What makes your song so special? What's did you create? Is it a sort of homage to the pyramid, or are, let's say, architectural relations translated to music? So what is the music about?
Well, first the pyramid, and we don't know the age of the pyramid. Some people say 4,000 years, but others say 11,000 years. I've read a lot about this building, and it's always inspired me because it's so mystical. So you can't understand what it is about. So when I came up with this idea of a musical interpretation of iconic buildings, I thought, well, this will be one. And then at a certain point, I had an idea about a certain motive. It popped up in my head. I wrote it down. And I thought, well, this is a very good motive for a musical motive for a violin. and then I combined it with the big band, the orchestra. And what I did is I gave it a sort of bolero rhythm. It's like a caravan through the desert. And so if you listen to it, it starts very simple with the violin, and then the orchestra is behind it, and it's a sort of a caravan moving through the desert to the pyramid. And the violin is playing all the time, and the instruments, the rest of the instruments are in a sort of dialogue with the violin. But it's the main theme, and it's variated many times in this piece of music. So it's not. Other people ask me, so if it's a pyramid, so it's very square, so the music is very square. No, that's not about it. It's about the environment of the pyramid. And then when we had this concert, I invited students of the school for film school in Amsterdam, and I told them I want a little film, an animation for next to the music, and I want a sort of bird flying through the desert, and the bird in the end flies away high in the sky. And in that point, that's also improvisation for the violin player. I told them, listen, this is a bird flying away, and he has about 16 or 20 bars where he improvises, and only the last 2 bars I wrote down, and he plays them in the music.
Oh.
So it starts with the caravan. Is that the right word in English? I think so. Caravan. They meet the pyramid, and then the bird flies through and disappears high up in the sky. And if you have that image in your head, I think you can relate it to the music.
Did you have that image before, and then you wrote down the music, or did you have the music and then you thought, oh, that might be the pyramid? So what was the starting point?
The starting point is that I had the pyramid. I've known all my life, you can say, and I got this musical theme. I looked for a theme which would go very well with this pyramid, and then together the music evolves. So it's not that the music is completely ready. So and then I look for a building. It's only the musical motive and the building itself. That's the start, and then I worked on that for the whole piece. And during the time, I got this image of this bird. And later on, I asked the students to come up with this animation.
Beautiful. Is it online, so we can put it in the show notes?
You can hear it on Spotify. It's called Architones. Architones. Very simple to find.
Yeah. We put the whole Spotify into the show notes, but I was thinking about that animation. Maybe that's also nice to share.
Yes, we're working on that. We are opening a YouTube channel where we will put these films and the music together, and it will be in the coming weeks. We will start with that.
Perfect. So the building is the first thing, and the music they go together in some way. So and in the case of the pyramid, it's a story, it's an impression, it's a feel. So that's how I hear it now. You also did another one for the Chinese wall, right? So my question there would be: hang on, Chinese wall. How long is it? Will this baby be the longest piece, or am I thinking completely in the totally different direction?
Yeah, well, that's every building, every piece of music has a completely different story. But the Chinese wall, I hope you're familiar with the pentatonic music. Well, the Chinese music is much with 5 tones, and we use, let's say, 7, or with half tones, totally 12. But if you hear a pentatonic piece of music, you start thinking about China, because it's related to China. So at a certain point, I had this pentatonic motive. I believe, playing at the piano, just trying out something, and I thought, well, this is very nice, and so I came up with this idea, and when I had it, I immediately thought about the Chinese wall, because It's the pentatonic motive. And this Chinese wall is long. Some people say it's 20,000 kilometers long, but others say it's about 4 or 6. So let's say it's about 5,000 kilometers long. And so it's always been, I've always been amazed, because as an architect, I work with clients. A client asks me, can you do this? Can you make a nice drawing for that? Or can you make sure the first brick is built for this and this building? So I always wonder which client was there for the Chinese wall. Which king said, we're going to build a wall of 5,000 kilometers? And what was the first brick like? Who built it? And so I need a wall 5,000 kilometers. And where do I start? Do I make a design of whatever, you know? So, but I can't make a piece of music too long. So I think it's not the longest piece of music. But what I did do is this motive, this pentatonic motive, it's all the time, all the way in the music. So in different instruments, in different pitches. But it's all the time there. And then there is other musical motives, they flow through it in different ways. So the length of the wall is symbolized by the repetition of this motive all the way long.
Because actually that's natural. If I would stay now in front of the Chinese wall, or maybe on the wall, and I would look left and right, so it will fade out. So because I can see the whole wall as a building. So this is my personal experience on the wall. Instead of the pyramid, if I stand in front of the pyramid, I will see the whole. Okay, not the backside, but I will see more or less the whole. Maybe that's also different.
You can't see the beginning and the end of the wall at the same time, but it's not relevant for me. It is just it starts somewhere, like the music starts with its motive, and it ends with the same motive. So it's the length is of no importance anymore, and the fading of the left and the right side, it's a different way of looking at it.
Yeah.
So how does the Chinese wall sound? Well, yeah, you can listen to it. That's my interpretation, but somebody else would do it completely different.
Yeah.
And that's the same with the pyramid. How does the pyramid? I could have made a very square and staccato music, but that didn't inspire me.
You talking about your process, how this works, or you just talked about the 5 tones that are in some kind of repetition via the whole orchestration, so they are all orchestrated over the whole ensemble. You also brought 3 examples of another piece where you show how your musical process works.
Right, and that's about the Peace Planet, the Peace Palace in The Hague. And that's another iconic building. Not that I think it's the most beautiful building in the world, but it's so important because it's, I think, one of the few examples where mankind has tried to solve problems not through war. Because it's a palace where so if there's a conflict, come on, we'll talk about it. And there are some judges, and they sentence and they say you're right and you're not, and that should be it. So it's I think admirable, this building, that it's there, that the Institute of the Peace, the Justices, International Court of Justice, that they are there. That's very admirable. So I wanted to honor this building as well, and at a certain point I had this musical idea, I think somewhere in the middle of the night. I wrote it down, and originally it was in a 3/4 time, and we can listen to it very shortly.
Het Vredespalais, oorspronkelijk idee in 3/4 maat.
Well, what you hear now is a very smooth waltz. I could make it a jazz waltz, then it's more funky. I could do anything. I could even put it in 6/8 bar if I would want to. I can change it in all kinds of music. I can make a symphony of it if I would want to. But very soon I thought it can be better if I make it a 4/4 bar instead of a 3/4. So maybe you can hear that as well.
Het Vredespalais in 4/4.
Well, and now it's a completely different song. It's very peaceful. From the first note on, it relaxes. So that's why I got this feeling. It's about peace. This music, in combination with the peace palette in The Hague, I involved this music further on. And if you hear the music. At the end of every bar, I heard instantly there should be a tambourine. Very simple. So it's like only a flute, and in this case, it's a soprano sax who's playing it. So it's so peaceful and so simple that the connection with the Peace Palace is evident for me. And then I started working on it. In the middle of this piece, the music starts to get more aggressive, and in the end, it's in a completely different, pitch, not pitch, tone sort. I'm looking for the word in English.
Mode.
In a different mode. So it starts very peaceful, but in the middle it's in a different mode. It's more aggressive, so you have to fight for peace. That's what I try to put into this music. Peace is not very simple. It's very hard to get. We all know that. And in the end it's peaceful again. Well, what you just heard is just me playing the piano, very simple. But and you only heard very simple notes. But if you listen to the music, especially the third part, so when the peace motive is coming back, and you hear what the saxophone player is doing. He's when I write 3 notes, he plays 20, and it's still the same motive, and he's very, very inspired. You can hear that, so it's very beautiful. What I think, and that's how I start with an idea in the middle of the night in a different. In 3/4 time, and in the end, it's a completely different song. And if you hear him playing, it's already much better than I ever wrote down. So it evolves. So you can say that.
And that's also the difference between, let's say, the score and the performance. So
Right.
the score is the idea, is the how did you say in architecture? The work sketches or
the working drawings.
The working drawing. So it's everything. It's, let's say, according the rules or according the ideas of your thinking, and then it gets to life. And there's music gives an extra, and there's also orchestration, because we just now hear the piano. That's, let's say, the score in its most dense form or its most concentrated form. And when you orchestrate an idea like this for the whole orchestra, and you pick out one of the instruments to get that effect, that's really, really beautiful. So everybody who wants to hear the Vredespalais, I think that's the original.
The name. Yeah.
So it's the Peace Palace in The Hague, Vredespalais. And looking forward to the soprano saxophone at the end.
Please listen to it, and you hear that I love what he's doing, and I'm especially very pleased with his motivation to do it like that. I don't know if he practiced many hours to get it like that. I don't know. Maybe he just saw the notes and played. That's also possible.
Nice.
You never know.
At the very end, there must be some magic.
Yeah, that's it. There was magic. There is magic. Yeah.
Nice. So, so we just covered quite a lot of different aspects from music and architecture. I think in our pre-talk we even thought about the quote from architecture is frozen music. So there might be a relation, and I tried to look it up, but some people say it's from Goethe, the writer and polymath, or other people say it's from Schopenhauer. But anyway, some people find a relation between architecture and music. So, as let's say a last question, is there something? How do you see the relation? What makes it special for you? Is it like a day job and a night job, or is it more connected outside of you as a person?
Well, I've been playing the piano since I was 6, but I was also very interested in urban plans and architecture also when I was small, because an aunt of me, she told me later I was already playing with little streets on we say in Holland, a Persian carpet with all lines. And I said, well, I saw all these lines, they were streets to me, and I tried to drive with my little car through the streets. So I was always interested in cities, in buildings, and so I've thought about this question about the connection between architecture and music all my life. And if you talk about music, you can. If you talk about music, it's already you can't say what you feel when you hear music. It's very hard to do. So what you start doing is to analyze the music. You start with, well, I've got a bass player, I've got a rhythm, I've got a genre, I've got a chords, a harmony, whatever, a melody. So you start analyzing. If you start talking about architecture, it's more or less the same. You start, you talk about the foundation, the structure, the what it does in the urban atmosphere. So it's all about aspects of architecture you talk about and aspects of music we can talk about. We can never say everything we feel when we hear the music. And we can also never say everything we feel when we see the architecture. So it's my conclusion after, let's say, all these years, the decades of thinking about it, is that both fields you can talk about it, but you can never say everything about it. So my conclusion is that you can only compare aspects of, let's say, if you have a structure of a building, we always put our bearing walls at the same, let's say, 5 meters from each other. That's a rhythm. You can compare a structure with rhythm. That's very obvious to do. But, in this project, in Architones, I came up with the idea to talk about a word, metamorphoses. Mm-hmm. And what I did is I put the letters metamorphose, I put them in a musical theme according to a scale, musical scale. Let's say the E and the A are already musical notes, but the M isn't. And so I made a melody out of that according to a scale. And then in every piece of music, there's some way this motive of metamorphosis incorporated. And we talked about Notre Dame, how it already changed during the building phase. It has been changed many times since then. Actually, at the moment, it's going to be changed as well, because a lot of these big windows, they are going to be much more modern than they used to be before the fire. So every old building has metamorphosis in it. So not only physical but also mental. What's the importance of the building? And to have this aspect of architecture in my music, I made this musical theme, and in many of the pieces it's there. And sometimes it's very obvious. You can hear it all the time in the music. And the other times it's only sparsely done, and sometimes it's not that there at all, because one of the buildings is the Gherkin in London. It's quite modern, so it doesn't have a metamorphosis yet, but maybe after 100 or 200 years it's already changed, and then you can talk about it. So that's how I made the connection between what happens with the building, the metamorphosis. I put it in the music.
And literally we hear metamorphoses set in, that's a certain set of tones.
Yes, 12 tones, yeah.
It's a little bit the same like Johann Sebastian Bach. When people quote Bach, it's like the di-da, di-da. And if you hear that, that's the B-A-C-H, because the H in German is the B. So actually it's a B-flat A-C-B.
Right, but you're right. That's so you can compare to that. But the thing, what happened with me is I had this idea of metamorphosis in the middle of the night. So I got up and this is a good idea, and I wrote it down. And then I put a scale according to the letters of the alphabet. So A, B, C, D, etc. And I came up with this motive, and it sounded very beautiful. So it's already in these 13 different pieces. It's there, but then I woke up, let's say the morning after, and I looked at my alphabet, and I forgot 2 letters because I was half asleep and it was in the middle of the night. So I corrected it. And then I made this motive again, but then the motive wasn't beautiful anymore.
Yeah, right.
So
we need these little mistakes or whatever mistakes.
I don't know why it happens, but it happened.
Or like serendipity, actually. Maybe if you would have thought about 12, maybe you would never come with a beautiful melody like this. So that's also the core of creativity, to try to do, to think, and sometimes to judge.
That's the same thing with creativity. You can never actually explain why it happened. You can talk about it, you can analyze it. So a lot of people talk about architecture, long stories written down why the building is as it is. But the original idea, you can't explain that. And I always felt if I see a beautiful building and I read about it, then I always feel the story about the building is made afterwards. Not, I have a good story and then because of the story I have this building. That's about creativity. It's there. Afterwards you can analyze it, but you can't actually explain it.
And we all can be creative in that way.
Well, I think that's the one thing which applies to every human being. We can be creative, and it can be I have a coffee or a tea. That's also our creativity, and a lot of people, I think, should be more occupied with creative things instead of looking at other people or being on social media or whatever. We have this opportunity as human beings. It's a gift. And we can use it, I always wonder why not many people see it like that.
Nice. Thank you very much, Ron, for all your insights. And I hope that people are inspired, and maybe even more inspired if they listen on Spotify or where else to your music, and maybe they imagine the buildings that you had in mind when you did them. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate this, because listening is one of the top leadership skills, and I feel honored about this. It is my mission to find, create, and share inspirations for meaningful collaboration based on music analogies. If you want to support this, please subscribe to the podcast, give us a rating, or write a review on iTunes or Spotify. And more inspirations can be found on musicthinking.com. We have a blog, and you can download the Music Thinking Framework. And finally, I would love to hear your feedback. And if you need help with a business challenge, please reach out to me via email, podcast@musicthinking.com.